Welcome back, South Philly Sauce, and Audacy Original, brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels, Ashlyn, Sullivan, Al Morganti. Here with you, the Flyers started a 7-game homestand, obviously a very crucial part to this schedule, to this season, as they're trying to stay in the playoff conversation. And it started in the worst way possible against a Calgary team that you looked on paper and said they should be able to beat this team. They should be able to start this homestand on a positive note. A 6-3 loss. Now you're playing from behind. It wasn't the worst news in the world for the standings. You got lucky because a couple teams above you lost, but you would have picked up some major ground with the win.
Yeah, it was a brutal loss. I know you go on the road, you come back. That's supposed to be tough, your first game back, but you're in a situation where you had all sorts of momentum coming in. Just beat the Winnipeg Jets on the road. I'm not buying it was mentally that tough to get into this once you come back home. That was an awful start to the homestand. You mentioned it. You can say, teams in front of you lost also, but that's your opportunity to pick something up. If you really, in order to stay in this thing, you're going to lose games, but that was, I almost looked at it like a giveaway. They just gave up. They, not perfect, obviously, there was effort, but the lack of just continuity in their game. It was from the beginning. It was like, oh my God, how did this happen? It doesn't look like the same team that played in Winnipeg.
No, it really didn't. It looked like two very much different teams. And the biggest difference, sadly, is your starting goaltender, Sam Ersson, who didn't play in Winnipeg. Was Ivan Fedotov, who started that game, that huge win. And it was one of the best performances, and not the best performance we've seen from Fedotov. Ersson plays against the Penguins, not the best. Then he starts against Calgary and gets pulled after the first period. And now you're left with some major questions about your goaltender, which is so unfortunate because he's played well for so long.
Yeah, like George, your dog. A lot of the fans are yapping. Like, what's going on with the goaltender?
My window's open. My neighbors are barking.
It's never fixed. Ersson played really well. Went to the Four Nations, came back. Look, how many times we talked about he looks like he can be the guy, and then to have a game like that. And it was obvious from the beginning. Before the puck was even over the line in the third goal, we were screaming in the street, "He's done! Just get him out!" And Fedotov had a strong game the game before, but I can understand you want to go back to your guy. The problem, Ashlyn, is you can't have a team that wants to chase a playoff spot where it can't be like a sailboat where it never is right. There's always something wrong. You can't, it's never smooth sailing. If one thing breaks and a mast breaks and a sail tears and this and that. So you can't have like the first line's going, but the defense isn't playing good. Then goalies are good, but then they can't score. It can't always be, what do they say? It's always something. You can't have that. And the one focus, the one thing you absolutely have to have if you're going to make a run is you have to have solid goaltending. Now, that's not to say that this isn't an aberration, that, a bad game in Pittsburgh and he doesn't play in Winnipeg, and then that horrendous game against Calgary. That's not to say he can't rebound from it. But boy, if it becomes there's no time for even a short trend of that. And that's what the big fear is.
Right. And it haunts you in a different way from last season when they were playing so well last year. There were none of these issues. And then they all of a sudden popped up at the worst times. In a smaller stance, it's like that with Ersson right now, where everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're being dramatic. It's a game and a half. Well, it's a game and a half right now that you got to have. So it might as well be 8 games at this point. And you just fear it carries over, which you hate to say because you hope it doesn't with Ersson. But now you're left, okay, Fedotov is playing a bit better at least the past 2 games.
Yeah, he is. It continues to be unorthodox watching him. I almost get hurt watching him play because the way he makes saves, but he makes the saves. At least he has anyway. But I don't know that he's built to be the number one guy, at least at this point. It's so unconventional watching him play. No, it's got to be, to me, it's got to be Ersson's got to rediscover he's got to find his game. He has to at least. You can't have the one. Last game was 3. You can't have even one bad one go through, especially when you've got certain guys not going. You're dependent on one line, so you have to really have it. And it's not that much as a coach. It's a real frustrating thing as a coach for any coach. Even teams that go on to win cups. It's like Winnipeg. They're so good. But when they get to the playoffs, the questions will be about Hellebuck, who might be the best goaltender on the planet. But in the playoffs, there's been some issues.
Yeah.
So when a team like that is like worried, imagine with the Flyers what it's like when you're so tenuous, the position that you're in to hold on to get you through. But there's no options. There's just no options. I still can't figure out, and I don't even know if this plays into it at all, but for the life of me, why there's 3 goaltenders still hanging around, it's beyond me. And you know, I don't know, practice, whatever, but I've never figured out that situation. No answers are coming from it. But beyond that, it's just up to Ersson to play a tighter game. I didn't think even in front of him, they didn't play well. But if you're going to get a spot, your goaltender has to make not just big saves, just expected saves.
Right. And that's the biggest bummer right now is you say there's always something. Well, there's so much going on this week. The last thing that you needed was questions about your goaltender at the start of a 7-game homestand when you're trying to get the city to buy into, hey, you got a chance here. You know, pay attention to us. We're in the conversation. Things go right. Things turn around. We're right in it. Well, now you have these questions about your goaltender and not to mention major questions of what this team is going to look like Friday afternoon after around 4:00. I mean, I saw Scott Lawton going down the hallway before the game against Calgary, and he's saying hi to all the security officials and everyone that's working the meals. And it was so weird for me to watch, thinking, gosh, like, could a guy like this, could this be it? Who's such a cornerstone, who's so important to this organization. You get why it could happen, but it was sad to watch, you know, thinking, is he saying goodbye or is he just saying hi? I didn't know, but just to witness it would be a massive bummer. Yeah.
The thing is, we've been through it with him so many times.
Can't get your hopes up, right?
It's almost like, you know, the week before the trade deadline is like, you know, high school relationships. Let's take some time away from each other, then you just get back the next weekend. That's what it seems like. It's like, all right, that's not really going to happen. We get back together. It's going to be just fine. This time might be real. We'll see. Toronto. We'll see who's going to, what they can get, how much you're going to ask for them. But I think the fact that they still don't know if they're, I don't know if they're genuinely in a playoff race, if they're thinking that way with all the teams they have to climb over and what they could get. I still think they're in a pretty good spot. And like, if they don't get exactly what they want, what's the problem? We'll just keep him. And he's certainly not a problem. You know, he's a team leader. It's not a problem at all. And if you can't hit the home run with him, like they have in their arsenal, if you will, they've got a triple and a home run. The triple is Lawton, what they could get for him. The home run is Ristolainen. So if you don't get that, you just don't let him go because you'll have control of him. It's not like you got to re-sign or whatever. So I mean, it's whatever those other teams are willing to give up. I would think that they're going to get a ton of calls about especially Lawton coming in. And what else plays in this is who else is available. The fact that so many other teams are still sort of where the Flyers are, sort of in it. I don't know how much of a market there's going to be. So we'll see what they can get. I've just seen it so many times where I'm thinking Lawton's gone through the Last Supper, and then there's another hamburger a week later. So I don't know. I don't know that's going to be. I hope not. Just selfishly, I mean, from our viewpoint on dealing with the team, it'd be a horrible loss. I mean, he's the one that answers questions. And with Torts as a coach, you need a couple of guys like that to, they can.
He sets the room.
And other players can, if they're doing that to those guys and they can deal with it, I can deal with it. So selfishly, hope he doesn't go anywhere. But if they get offered a home run in terms of draft picks, young talent, I think they're going to be tempted there.
Yeah, you got to do it. You understand definitely both sides of it. So we'll see what happens on Friday. It seems like Lawton is much more in the conversation as of right now than Rasmus Ristolainen, but we'll definitely keep our eyes on both of those guys. And we always have something encouraging on these podcasts. And definitely, if you're looking big picture, if you're looking forward, it's Matvei Michkov and how well he has played after the break. It was very clear he needed to get his legs back. It's already been said that that's going to be the number one thing they focus on this summer is his conditioning so that he can play a full season 100 miles an hour. But Michkov's been excellent since the break, and that's what you hope is you just hope they're in meaningful games for someone like him to experience that.
Yeah, I really like his game. He seems to be refreshed, obviously, after the break. But in big games, he seems to have another gear that he goes to. And I also like the fact that although his ice time still isn't like leading the team at all, he's still kind of measured ice time, if you will, in what they're getting from him. But I like the fact that they put him out there at key times, even at times where it could be risky. 3-on-3, made a mistake, they use him the next game, 3-on-3. I really like that. And even in the game they lost against Calgary, in that last period, when he was on the ice, they had chances. I mean, he nearly scored again from like basically behind the goal. He gets all sorts of opportunities there. And when he's on the ice late in the game, you really have that sense that they could get it done. And that, I think, is what the Flyers have been missing. And I like the fact that the coaching staff is willing to put him out at that time. So I think that's a real good sign. He's made mistakes. I mean, watch at practice, they have special 3-on-3. I mean, he can be flat out horrendous in that situation. But we'll go back to goaltending. It might be a case with a player like that. You risk it and say, you know what? If he gets caught, my goaltender is going to make the big save. There are guys like that, and he may be one of those guys. And it's got to be risk-reward. And the reward is so high. Now, he didn't get credit for his 20th goal. I guess the Couturier got credit for the goal. But that was him setting everything up there. And everybody he plays with, they're starting to figure out how to, like, he doesn't have that centerman, that real creativity, but he's become almost a center from the wing that he can send it across. And people now have their blades of their stick on the ice when he's on the ice because you don't know where he's coming from. So I really think that there's been progress with him. I'm impressed how he's come along in terms of play without massive ice time. They didn't make the mistake that Chicago made with Bedard, just let him go. He's got some responsibilities now. I think he knows the mistakes he's making. I love the fact on the bench. I know a couple of years or last year they didn't want iPads on the bench. I love the fact that Michkov's there looking at things. Couturier setting him up on face-offs, what to do. Yeah. It's obvious that the communication barrier is broken down pretty steadily as the season's gone along. So in my view, it's been an A+ season, whether he gets the Rookie of the Year or not. It's been an A+ season, and it's getting better as they go toward the deadline.
Right.
He's not getting.
He's not getting traded. That would be a blockbuster trade. And it's at the point where Michkov has had to do these things as we get here to Lost in the Sauce. Normally we pick two players and we have some options. We have some conversations. Yeah. There's no more glaring lost in the sauce than Travis Konecny. I believe it's 1 goal in the past 15 games. And John Tortorella talked about it the other day at Morning Skates, how TK can't allow himself to get fueled, to get frustrated, to grip the stick too tight. But it's so clear watching him. He is that. And knowing his personality, you can't tell a player like that, hey, don't get frustrated, you'll get him next time. Like, that's just not him.
No, you could see it. We saw it in the Winnipeg game. His shootout attempt was, I don't even know what he was doing. Obviously trying to do too much. And that happened throughout the game. And you can see that with him. You know, he went to the Four Nations, didn't play in that last game. Now he's in that scoring. And for him, a scoring slump is, you multiply it times 2. If he doesn't score in 2 games, in his mind, it's 4. If he doesn't score in 4 games, in his mind, it's 8. And he's one of those guys, although Torts will say, oh, you know, he has to just play or whatever. Don't think you'll hurt the team. But you see guys like this all the time. And it's like telling somebody to close their eyes and think of everything but the color red. Well, all you're going to see is red. basically, that's what you got going on with TK. I mean, and the fear is that when he becomes a real detriment. That's why they take him off a line at times. Like, oh, if he's going to do that, he's going to cost us in a close game. And you want to get him going. But in these games, if it's late and the point means so much, you have to wonder, is he going to try too much here? Boy, and that's probably why, in fact, Torts said it. That's why they used him in their shootout, just to get him. If he scores, maybe that's what gets it going. So it's as critical as the goaltending is, and as good as Michkov's been, as good as the Cates line's been, as good as Ristolainen's been, TK's still the guy that things should kind of swirl around. And so if they're really, really going to hang in it, and especially in what's left of this 6 games in this homestand, he just flat out has to get going. And it's pointless to tell him relax, because it ain't happening until he scores a goal.
And hopefully it is soon in this homestand, because the Flyers, they really need him at this point of the year. They need everyone. They need their stars, because they got to turn it around quick. If they're going to keep staying in the conversation of a playoff race, 6 more games in this homestand, 3 more games this week, a really busy week with the Flyers, as well as the trade deadline on Friday. So a lot to discuss. We'll talk about it on our next episode of South Philly Sauce, an Audacy original, brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels. We'll see you next time.